Hey everybody, I'm Derek Fallon.
And I'm David Allen.
And you're watching Flight Review, a YouTube channel dedicated to the adventure of flying.
We both want to thank you so much for tuning in. I guess tuning in is not a thing anymore, but you found us.
We want to take a couple minutes to set the expectations and lay some ground rules out for what you can expect to see on Flight Review.
There's lots of flying, and I promise you we're going to get to that, but let's take a look. This is the Orlando Melbourne International Airport. It's the airport I grew up around. It's my home airport, and it's the airport where I first got to fly in a little airplane. It's also the home of Melbourne Flight Training. Melbourne Flight Training has 4 of these Cessna 172 Skyhawks. They have a Cirrus SR-20, and they also have this beautiful twin-engine Beechcraft Duchess. Most of my flight training is going to take place in one of these Skyhawks. This is where I'm going to learn how to fly airplanes. I love this airport. There's so much happening here. It has FBOs, flight schools, aircraft manufacturing and maintenance, and scheduled airline service. One of the most important things about this airport is that it is growing. In an era where airports seem to be constantly under fire from their surrounding communities, this is great news. The Airport Authority recently completed a complete resurfacing of all 3 runways. A new air traffic control tower is currently under construction, and aviation companies like Northrop Grumman, Embraer, and Satcom Direct continue to call this airport home. So primarily, I'm going to be focused on getting my private pilot's license. And to be fair, it's actually not even a license at all, is it?
No.
Tell us about that.
It's a certificate.
Okay. What is that?
It means that you've passed all the required items laid out by the FAA to become a pilot, and you receive a certificate from them that says David is allowed to fly airplanes for the test that he's passed.
So there's all kinds of different certificates, and there's also some ratings. And so I'm going for my private pilot certificate.
That's correct.
That's where we're going to start.
Yep.
And there's actually a sport pilot certificate, which we're not really going to deal with because I'm going to pass that and go right into private.
Yeah.
Tell me about...
Sport pilot is really for people who can't hold a medical. They want to fly an airplane that is certified for only 2 people, that they have a greater weight restriction. It's a lighter weight airplane. It's certified in a different manner. Light sport would be a great place for someone who just wants to have fun flying and fly small little Rotax powered airplanes or something.
And I know somebody who's actually flown a Rotax powered airplane under a sport pilot certificate to all 50 states.
That's really cool.
And it's very, very cool. So don't get us wrong, the sport pilot certificate is a valid certificate and you can do a lot of flying with it. But if you want to go anything beyond simple recreational flying, you got to get something with more permissions than that.
That's correct.
So let's talk about what is the private pilot certificate. Let's define it, and then let's talk about what it takes to get one.
The private pilot certificate is a certificate that allows you to operate an aircraft within the United States and internationally within the regulations set forth by the FAA.
And what does it give me if I have a private pilot certificate? Like what can I do with that?
You can fly anywhere you want, anytime you want, because it's a free country. It's one of the only countries that you can just go fly wherever you want, which is actually pretty cool. It allows you to fly your friends. It allows you to fly for charity. It allows you to do search and rescue and help out. And mostly people use it for business or personal travel to avoid flying on the airlines or driving long distances and avoiding traffic. It's actually safer than driving on the highway too, which is pretty cool. So it really gives you it really unlocks the world for you a little bit, where you can just jump in a plane and you can go almost fly right into the neighborhood you're trying to get to, and some people can fly straight into a state park that they want to go to, or it allows you to access inaccessible places like the Bahamas, for example, where you can just go fly to an island that you otherwise would not be able to get to unless you had a very large ship.
So let's focus now on this private pilot certificate. What does it take? Right. So this is so much great information, and Derek and I talked about this stuff for like 26 minutes. And so I don't want to make you sit through the whole thing. So let me summarize. Okay, getting a private pilot's license or certificate 101. First, it's the paperwork. Got to have that out of the way before we can do anything. Verify eligibility. That means you got to be old enough, and you also have to be able to read, speak, and understand the English language. Next, you need to get yourself a student pilot certificate. And this is done through a site called IACRA. It's part of the FAA's website, and we have to get that done. Next is a medical exam, and there's 3 classes of medical exam. I'm getting the lowest class, the 3rd class medical exam. Then you have to do ground school, and in the ground school, this is where we learn about all of the stuff that we have to do to be a safe pilot. We learn about weather and navigation and aircraft systems and procedures and maneuvers and aerodynamics. We have to learn all that stuff so that later on we can take the written exam. And we don't have to actually have this done before we start flying, but you do have to have all of these done before you can get your private pilot's license and go for the practical exam. You have to verify eligibility, get your student pilot certificate, and have a medical exam done before you solo. And then these last 2, the ground school and written exam, have to be done before the check ride day. Ground school can be done any number of ways. We're actually going to do this using an online ground school at the place I'm going, but this can also be done one-on-one or in a classroom environment. That's that. Then we can start flying. Flying for the private pilot certificate is broken up into 3 phases. The pre-solo phase, where we learn how to safely operate the aircraft, learn how to take off, land, climb, descend, turn, stall the airplane and recover from stalls, prepare for emergency procedures, and make sure that I'm safe in the airplane. Mostly this is learning about landing. Once I can get and do all of that safely, I will actually solo the aircraft on a day when I'm flying. Derek will then get out of the airplane, and I will fly around the pattern 3 times. Typically that's done with a full stop and taxi back 3 times around the pattern, and at that point I am a solo pilot, and that's when my shirt tails get cut. Then we begin the cross-country phase, where I learn how to go somewhere. And for me, this is where it gets really exciting. Now I'm actually going to get in the airplane, and we're going to fly to another airport at a distance and learn how to get there safely. Plan for weather, plan for a route, time, fuel consumption, navigation, so that we can arrive at this other place and we can start using the pilot's license for adventures. Now, during all of this, I'm only either flying with my flight instructor or another flight instructor, or by myself. I'm never going to be flying with another passenger until after I get my license. So the 3rd phase, after we've got the cross-country and the pre-solo done, we're going to begin working on check ride preparation, and that's when I get ready to take the exam with an FAA examiner or a designated pilot examiner. So we're going to take the practical check ride, and the practical check ride is actually 2 parts: an oral examination and then a practical exam in the sky, where I actually demonstrate everything I've learned. And once I've passed my check ride, I get a pilot certificate. This is where we're going. Okay, 2 quick disclaimers. I hate having to do these, but let's just get them out of the way. Number 1, this series is a documentary of my flight training adventure. Editing, by its very nature, removes context. So if you see something that looks out of place or missing or out of order, It's because of the editing. I'm here to be real, to show you the highs and the lows of my flight training experience, and there will be plenty of lows, by the way. But do not expect to see the entire unedited story from beginning to end. That would be really boring, and frankly, no one would watch it. So while I welcome and encourage your comments, please keep your criticism both constructive and positive. You're simply not seeing the whole story. Disclaimer number 2. Derek is one of the hardest working guys I've ever met, and he's a fantastic flight instructor. But unless you fly to Melbourne Airport and hire him to be your flight instructor, none of this should be considered flight instruction for you. I encourage you to open a dialogue with your flight instructor about the things that you see in this series, but please do not consider anything you see here to be personal flight instruction for you. This is my experience and my documentary of what happened to me and me alone. All right, we good? Sweet. Now, some of you have asked how you can support the show, and at least one of you actually asked about a Patreon link. And we are going to set up a Patreon site so that you can support the show through financial contributions if you want, but it's not required. We will still create and produce all of this content free of charge. And if you want to support the show, you're welcome to do it, and we'll show you how to do that in a future episode. So that's it for this episode of Flight Review. We are going to get to actual lessons in the next episode. And I just want to thank you so much for joining us during this time. If I've earned your subscription, you can click that button right down there at the bottom and subscribe to the show. That would mean the world to us if you would subscribe. And thank you so much. We'll see you next time.